Hello, everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, November 1st, and I hope you're all having a wonderful start to your month. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we go over to Alan, where he will speak with Robert Nishihara, co-founder and CEO at Anyscale, to unpack the essential infrastructure needed to make AI a reality and why unified platforms like Ray and Anyscale are critical. Alan then speaks with John Graham Cumming, CTO at Cloudflare, about how Cloudflare will launch Turnstile, a new API that any site owner can use to replace CAPTCHAs on their site. Then we go to Open Source Summit Europe, where Mike Vizard spoke with Ross Mowry, General Manager for IBM Z at IBM, as Ross explained why mainframes provide a more climate-friendly approach to reducing the total cost of IT. Also at Open Source Summit Europe, Mike spoke with Tim Sarowicz, Training Program Director of the Linux Foundation, as Tim explained how the consortium is addressing a chronic open source software skills shortage. Then we are airing episode 19 of The Lab with Brendan O'Leary, where Brendan tells us about this month's GitLab release. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of our upcoming webinars. Next up, we are airing episode 2 of our series Engineering the Change. This series will follow the 3 winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship Program as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. Then, to wrap up this broadcast, we have 2 episodes of View with Vizard. In the first episode, Mike interviews CodeNotary CTO, Dennis Zimmer, where Dennis explains why there is a need for an open source immutable database that acts as an alternative to blockchain platforms and will better secure software supply chains. Then Mike interviews OccamSec CEO, Mark Stamford, where Mark explains why securing software supply chains will not be an easy fix anytime soon, given all the time and effort that will be needed to address cybersecurity technology issues and cultural inertia within application development teams. And that's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for November 1st. First up, workers of an iPhone factory in central China walked away due to virus outbreaks and unsafe working conditions. The workers started leaving the factory back in mid-October after some workers fell ill. And while the factory started requiring masks and disinfecting daily, normal work continued. The number of workers who have walked away from the factory since then has grown. However, the total number is currently unknown. This is all happening as Apple has been pushing and pressuring the factory to maintain the output of iPhone 14s during its peak production season, showing the interesting dynamic between controlling disease outbreaks while also trying to restore the flow of goods globally. Next up, the White House has brought several dozen countries and private sector companies together for a 2-day summit on how to fight ransomware attacks. This summit, the second International Counter-Ransomware Summit, started on Monday and will focus on developing systems that are able to withstand attacks, as well as stopping the bad actors that plan these attacks. This summit is occurring as ransomware attacks are becoming more and more of a pressing problem, and the countries and companies that are going to the summit want to find ways to stop it. While on the topic of ransomware, the Indianapolis Housing Agency has been hit by one such attack. The federal agency that provides low-income housing in Indianapolis lost access to its emails, delaying their ability to send out rent payments that 8,000 Indianapolis families depend on. A current investigation is underway, but the agency has not released any details regarding the motive or the identity of the attackers. This being said, the agency has been able to make all October rent payments to landlords, and November payment rents are still on track. In other news, a judge in Washington has ordered Meta to pay $10.5 million in legal fees, on top of the already $25 million fine for what would be the largest campaign finance fee in U.S. history. The judge set the fine based on more than 800 violations of Washington's Fair Campaign Practices Act, which requires ad sellers to make public the names of those who buy political ads. Meta has argued that this burdens political speech, but ultimately lost the suit. Zooming out, this is not the first time Meta has been sued for breaking this particular law, with the first being in 2018, also having lost and paying fines. On Digital CXO, we have an article that looks at the connection between cloud transformation and data modernization. Cloud-driven business agility allows organizations to turn challenges into opportunities, but cloud transformations also need to consider data modernization to reduce duplication, simplify architecture, and speed up data pipelines. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. On Security Boulevard, we have an article looking at the survey that shows the ongoing skills gap in the IT security space. From the almost 12,000 practitioners that took the survey, 70% felt that their organizations did not have enough cybersecurity staff to be effective, and half felt that the workforce shortages put their organizations at a high risk of a cyber attack. To learn more about the findings from the survey, go to securityboulevard.com. Finally, on DevOps.com, we have an article looking at Mesmo's launch of an observability pipeline platform to make it simpler to manage machine data. Mesmo has stated that the goal is to provide a framework for centralizing the flow of observability data that is being generated across DevOps workflows. To learn more about Mesmo's new observability pipeline, go to DevOps.com. And that's today's TechStrong News Recap.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I've got a really exciting, new person to introduce. Well, he's not a new person. He's just new to our audience. A new guest here on Techstrong TV. I'm excited to have him on and hear his story and talk with him a bit. Let me introduce you to Robert Nishihara. Robert is the CEO founder of a company called AnyScale. Is that correct, Robert?
Right. That's right.
Fantastic. Robert, I really want to start with your own personal story, if it's okay, if you wouldn't mind sharing with the audience.
And we'll go from there.
Absolutely. So I've always been interested in AI. I did a PhD in machine learning before we started this company. And actually, where the starting point for me was really trying to design better algorithms for machine learning training, for deep learning, for optimization, much more on the algorithmic side. But what happened over time was that in order to actually try out the algorithms that we were designing, machine learning is very compute intensive, and we needed to actually scale these algorithms across many machines. And to do that, there was a ton of just software engineering work, of expertise, of infrastructure work that had to be done to actually build the infrastructure for scaling the machine learning algorithms. And that's where we ended up spending all of our time. It was like, 10% of our time on the actual machine learning part, which is what we thought was our expertise, and 90% of the time on building the tooling and infrastructure for actually running machine learning. So that kind of, and it wasn't just us, right? All of our friends who were doing machine learning were running into the same challenges. And so we started, some of my, co-founders and I, and of course it wasn't a company at the time. We were grad students and people around UC Berkeley. But we started building open source tools for trying to make it easy to build scalable applications, scalable Python applications, scalable machine learning applications. And that is that's the project that became Ray, the open source project that we're building.
Love it.
And, so that's how we got started. And of course, as I can say a lot more about that, but as Ray was taking off, as more and more, started with other people around Berkeley using it. But as it grew to more and more companies adopting Ray, and that's when that led us to actually start AnyScale, to really commercialize Ray, to try to make it easy for developers to build these and scale these AI applications without actually having to be experts in infrastructure. So that's sort of how it all got started.
Got it. Love it. And we should mention, you mentioned you were a PhD student at Berkeley.
That's right.
Graduated and been awarded a PhD. You also, I think, had a master's degree from Harvard.
Right?
I did. I was an undergrad at Harvard. Yeah.
Undergrad Harvard. Okay. So you had a little education.
Not a bad thing.
But I would posit that it wasn't just you and your friends at Berkeley who are having these scale issues. Scale is hard. Hyperscale is harder.
Right?
Yes.
Next week I'm in Detroit for KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, and two projects coming out of there, Prometheus, which you probably are familiar with, and Open Telemetry.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily AI, but around this whole observability space.
Yeah.
The scale issue was it was so hard, and I guess that's sort of a path in today's world. Look, for these hard scalable things, let's start with an open source project where we can get co-opetition, if you will. We can
get people
absolutely
to jump on it.
And these are, the projects you mentioned are very successful, and it's they're actually quite complementary with what we're doing. Because if you are building, if you're building these large scale applications and deploying your machine learning models, a big challenge is not just developing the application, but actually debugging if something goes wrong. It's actually knowing, how do you even know if something went wrong?
Right.
And so observability and this kind of tooling plays a huge role. And so it's very complementary with what we're doing to actually do machine learning successfully. And, there are many companies, or at least a number of companies, that get a lot of value out of machine learning. There are many pieces to the picture, right? Of course, there's the model training and deployment. There's the observability tooling. There's things like model registries for storing and versioning your models. There's experiment tracking. There's feature stores. There's all these different pieces, right? Just to sort of describe how we fit into that ecosystem, the part that we are focused on is really the compute piece, like managing and scaling the actual compute for things like training or the data ingest and pre-processing, the deployment. So actually running the machine learning. And then all of these surrounding pieces for the metadata and everything, we try to integrate with all the other tools out there. So things like, Open Telemetry or Prometheus that you mentioned.
Sure.
So Robert, I want to talk Ray to AnyScale, but before we do, you brought it up, and I want to I'd love your opinion on this.
Yeah.
Look, there are a lot of people out there who have kind of dipped their toes into the machine learning stream.
And it was a little too cold for them, right? They didn't get the results
they were expecting or hoping for. I think one of the issues is the just the very term, machine learning, AI. Are they interchangeable? Are they the same? What's the difference?
Yeah.
You're an expert. How do you kind of delineate?
Right. So I guess when I'm just speaking, I do use them interchangeably, but I think of machine learning, I think of machine learning more as the technique to achieve AI, or one of the approaches for building AI, and AI is a bit more of the kind of results or the the description of the properties of the thing you're creating, and machine learning is a little more like one approach to creating intelligent machines.
Got it.
And you could imagine having other approaches to designing and creating programs that have intelligent behavior other than learning from data. Yeah.
I think
I think that learning from data is the lower hanging fruit on the AI tree, right? I think, look, for some people say not so much, right?
Fair enough. And actually, that's a good point, because I want to say a lot of, like, certainly companies like Google, or Meta, or companies like that, Uber, use AI in just all their products and get significant value out of AI. But it is extremely hard, and many AI projects fail, right? Many companies try out AI and, have the intuition that they should be able to get value out of making better predictions, or things like that. But it's very hard to do in practice, and there are a lot of ways things can go wrong. It could be, it's possible that the data is not in place, right? Maybe the data isn't good enough. It's possible that you're able to prototype it, and this is actually one stumbling block that we see quite a lot. Is you are able to prototype things and get started, but then the shift from development and prototyping to production is just a completely different story. It's a different tech stack. It's a different team. It's like scaling things. And that's one place where a lot of things fail as well. There's maintaining it in production, and all of the other, tooling around, what we talked about with observability and monitoring and so on.
At the end of the day, would you say scale is probably one of the hardest things? Because it seems to me you can't really have great machine learning without a certain scale, right? And so then getting to that scale and then managing that scale to extract, to extract real value in machine learning, I think that's where people stumble.
Right. It may work great
in a lab in a smaller kind of controlled experiment, but only the Google, this was the knock on DevOps when I started DevOps.com 8 or 9 years ago. It's great for the hyperscalers, the Facebooks, the Googles of the world, the Twitters of the world. It doesn't work for, those were unicorns back then. They called those unicorns, but it doesn't work for horses.
Right? That was the saying.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the same thing with AI ML kind of stuff?
It's great for unicorns, but not horses.
Well, it will be good for everybody. It will, or at least I'm hopeful that we'll get to the point where AI is transformative for every business and every industry. Now, if you're talking about today, yes, a lot of companies, it is quite hard to do AI and to get value out of AI. And scaling, certainly that's where, I was stumbling when we were doing machine learning. And it's, tons of people are learning to program in Python, right? Lots of people are taking introductory computer science classes, are learning Python. Sure. And so getting started on your laptop and copying and pasting an PyTorch example, or training your first machine learning model, like, that's doable. But going from programming on your laptop to now scaling these applications across clusters, it's there's so many new challenges you have to think about. It's how do you divide the work across the different machines? How do you handle if one of the machines fails, right? If you need it to be elastic, how do you scale up and down? Or there's the scheduling challenges. How do you move data efficiently between machines? All of these kinds of things, are super hard distributed systems problems. And this is why companies that do machine learning often have very large infrastructure teams, machine learning infrastructure teams, to actually build the systems to do this. And of course, we are trying to get to the point with Ray and any scale where all you need to know is Python, right? Where if you know how to program in Python on your laptop, you took that introductory computer science course, that's enough, right? You can build the same kinds of scalable applications that, a Google can build. But you don't have to become an expert in distributed systems. So now, I'm not saying we've 100% gotten all the way there yet, but that's what that's a great progress.
Yeah, no, that's a great goal too.
Yeah.
Robert, let me turn really any scale Ray specific here. You know what? Look, I've been involved in open source communities for a really long time, 20 plus years, 25 plus years. there was a time where, people doubted open source business models, right? How can you build a commercial entity on top of an open source product? Red Hat was the shining example, but it was few and far between. That's not true anymore. Today, we know there are open source business models that are very successful. There's tons of companies.
Just look at Databricks, right?
Yeah, Databricks is one of many. You go to KubeCon in Detroit next week, you'll see tons of them, right? Some already public, some, very well financed, etc. Unicorns. Talk to us about the relationship of Ray and Anyscale. Obviously, Anyscale, is kind of built on Ray, if you will, but it adds functionality that the open source only
project doesn't have. What's the differences?
So first of all, Ray is a open source project. It's a Python library. It's basically a framework for an open source framework for scaling compute, right? For scaling Python applications and machine learning applications. Okay, so that's all open source. Anyscale is a managed Ray service. So basically, we run Ray for you in the cloud. Basically, so a lot of people just don't want to be in the business of managing infrastructure, and if we can do that for them, you just click a button or have some simple API call and you have all the Ray clusters you need. You can run your applications. The clusters will scale up and scale down, and all of your outputs will be, the results will be persisted and shareable. And, you have all of the tooling and dashboards around that. Then that's what we're giving you. So one is just the managed nature of the product.
But it's a SaaS Ray, if you will.
Yes, trying to get to the point where developers just focus on their Python, just their application logic. A lot of what we're building in Anyscale is around really trying to remove friction from the developer experience. So these are things like, better tooling around debugging and observability, right? If something went wrong, do I have the relevant logs and dashboards and metrics to understand what went wrong, right? A lot of it is also around simplifying in Anyscale, moving from development to production. There are many companies that say once they develop a model, it takes them 6 weeks or 12 weeks or some huge amount of time to actually get it in production. And there are different reasons for this, but one is that you often have to rewrite a lot of code, and you use different tools and hand it off to a different team. And a lot with Anyscale, you can really go quite quickly from development to production using the same kind of environment, same kind of tooling. So those are some of the values. Now, a lot of the value that we are working on as well is around the actual infrastructure. So, making Ray run faster, making it more performance, right? Making it cheaper with like great support for preemptible instances, spot instances, things like that. So those are some of the directions we've been going in.
Love it. Hey, Robert, we're about out of time. For people who want to know about Anyscale and Ray, where can you give them websites to go to?
Yeah, anyscale.com. You can try it out. And if you Google or Ray.io is also a great place to, check out the Ray documentation, learn about Ray. We just had
on GitHub.
There's in the github.com/ray-project/Ray.
Okay.
We just had our first in-person Ray summit a couple months ago here in San Francisco. Cool. And it was, had a bunch of people, and there's a lot of recorded talks from this event. So you can hear people, Uber talking about how they run all of their deep learning on Ray, or OpenAI talking about how they train their largest models using Ray, or Shopify, they built their entire machine learning platform using Ray. Wow. Instacart trains tens of thousands of machine learning models using Ray and was able to, reduce the training time from days down to hours. So there's an incredible number of very cool use cases.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Hey, Robert, first of all, congratulations on everything you've done here, from the education to putting this together with Ray and now Anyscale. Come back, keep us posted on this. This is, something I think it's really cool and our audience finds very, very interesting. So we'd love to have you back on.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
All right. Robert Nishihara, CEO, founder of Anyscale, and also the folks behind Ray. hopefully making ML and AI much more successful for you out there. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. Our next guest in today's show, I'm really actually thrilled to have him on. It was a long time getting it together. It's John Graham Cumming. John is the CTO of Cloudflare. And let me say at the outset, we're a Cloudflare customer here at Techstrong. The Cloudflare, our sites sit behind that Cloudflare network, protecting us from DDoS and a whole bunch of other good stuff and making our sites snappier and faster. Anyway, hey John, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. Look, we're going to discuss this great new offering from Cloudflare. But before we do, I'm sitting out here, I take for granted everyone knows what Cloudflare is. But there are probably people, even though we have a tech audience, that are not familiar. Maybe we should clue them in, what's Cloudflare about?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably the biggest tech company you haven't heard of, if you haven't heard of us. We operate 275 data centers around the world, so literally in all the big cities in the world, and we protect about 20% of websites, and we protect a whole load of other stuff, so including your websites, right? But also businesses and all sorts of things, APIs, apps, all manner of things from hackers, from DDoS, from hackers trying to break in, from ransomware, all this kind of stuff. We also do performance as well. We're a CDN, so that means that we distribute content around the world to make everything faster, and we also make it more private. So what we do is we protect, we accelerate, and we make private about 20% of the web and a lot of other stuff. And so I always say you've used us today without realizing it, because you've gone to some website or something or used an app that Cloudflare protects. So, you may not have heard of us, but we are there helping keep the web and the internet safe.
Absolutely. I first became aware of Cloudflare, I'm going to say 2010. I used to host, America's Growth Capital Partners, AGC, used to put on a conference every year around RSA time, or around RSA conference in San Francisco. And I used to host the cloud security panel.
Yep.
And that I had your CEO on.
This is early.
Yeah. Oh, very early days. Yeah. We launched around that time. I've been with the company since 2011. So, it's, we had that vision at the beginning of doing what we do today. We just did it with 2 data centers back then, and now we have more than 275.
Well, because
back then, CDNs were known. Akamai was the CDN, but Akamai wasn't known as much for security then, right? It was pure CDN. Cloudflare was kind of the first time I had the concept of using a CDN for security as well, right? A shield rather than just a delivery mechanism. So
I think that's right. Yeah. If you remember back then, Akamai was really the great pioneer in CDNs. And that was at a period when it was like, how do I deliver a video to somebody on the internet and do it successfully around the world? And they built a whole load of
at 420 or whatever it was.
Yeah, whatever it was, right?
Yeah,
and then, Cloudflare took a sort of slightly different approach, was to say, we'll just handle all of your traffic, and that'll let us accelerate it and also do the security stuff. That's where we are today, and that's become a very popular model for how CDNs now operate.
Absolutely. We could talk about CDNs and stuff another time, but hey, before we dive in, also just maybe a little bit about your background, John. I know you have quite an interesting
CV.
Well, so my background is that I went to university in the UK. I actually did a PhD in computer security stuff, so I was always interested in computer security. And then I ended up working for startups. I actually worked for 7 startups in a row, both in the UK, then in the US, then in France and Germany, and then in the UK again. And actually, I now live in Portugal. So I've traveled around quite a bit.
You.
And I've done a lot of security and a lot of networking stuff over my career. And I've been at Cloudflare since it was it wasn't brand new, but it was pretty tiny.
Absolutely. Portugal's good. I have several people here in my office looking to move to Portugal. They have this new digital nomad, visa, and
That's right,
people
there is.
looking there.
Yep.
Yep. Anyway, let's dive into what we really kind of were going to talk about today, and that is Cloudflare has come out with a new offering, set of APIs, which seek to finally eliminate a scourge of many of us on the internet, of users, and that is the CAPTCHA things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And tell us about it. Well, first of all, why? I called it a scourge.
I mean,
Well,
I'm
it
sure
is
you
a
guys have.
scourge. It is a scourge, right? I mean, it's an incredible waste of time if you think about it. Which is, you're proving that when people say you're proving that you are human. Actually, you're doing the opposite. You're proving that you're not a robot, and you really shouldn't have to do that, right? I mean, there's nobody likes captchas at all, and they are. They're bad for all of us. They're very bad if you have any sort of disability. So, if you have difficulty seeing, there can be difficulty with motor function. I mean, they're just a complete nightmare. They also tend to be culturally biased. Like, so for example, a fire hydrant in the UK doesn't look anything like a fire hydrant in the US. And so when it says, identify the fire hydrants, I'm like, well, if I hadn't seen American TV programs when I was growing up, I'd have no idea that it's that.
What the heck that is, exactly. The Johnny Pump, as we call it.
There you go. So they're a real mess. And also, they don't actually work that well anymore because there are companies and hacker groups dedicated to breaking them, even to the point of actually paying people to break them. So there are people who sit there all day just doing captures, which sounds like an absolutely terrible job, and getting paid a pittance for it. So we wanted to get rid of captures, but we still need to block bots, right? We still need to block these things. So you need to have something that kind of gets rid of this problem. And so we had done this for ourselves. We'd built this, internally it was called No Capture, which was to get rid of captures completely. It was to have a way of saying, this web browser session that's happening right now is a human behind it. And we built a whole load of technology around this, making sure your browser is genuine, making sure you seem to be behaving like a human. Humans tend to move the mouse a little bit and, things like this. And also sending challenges to the browser, which you never see. We ask the browser, so a browser comes along and says, I'm Google Chrome version blah, blah, blah. And we say, aha, are you a robot pretending? And we have the little challenges we send. So this whole thing is called Turnstile. And we built it for ourselves. And then we're just like, Cloudflare has this mission to help build a better internet. And it was like, we should just open it up for everybody. It's privacy preserving. You're not giving away private information, unlike, Google reCAPTCHA. I mean, Google themselves are a company that is based on advertising and wants more and more data. And so, the alternative is reCAPTCHA, which is, first of all, captures. And also, you have to worry about where your data is going. And with us, first of all, that's not our business. And second of all, we have a very strong privacy heritage. And so we're like, you know what? We should just build this thing and make it available to everybody. And that's Turnstile. It's available now. Whether you're a Cloudflare customer or not, you can just go and use it. And we're starting to see.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We've done this for a couple of privacy preserving products. We have Turnstile, and we also have an analytics product, which is sort of an alternative to Google Analytics. And you don't have to be an existing customer. You can just use it. And if you later on become a customer, great, that's fantastic. But the idea is that you can use the service. We have the scale to run it for, people out there. And it just makes, it makes us better if things are private, and especially captures, which are horrible. So.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been frustrated because I didn't click every crosswalk or couldn't find all the bridges because they really have an overpass and they call that a bridge.
Yes, there you go.
Or the old style captures where you got to type in the number letter sequence, but they have them hidden in abstract art. And what the hell is that anyway?
Yeah. Yep.
So now I'm hitting the audio thing so it reads it out to me. What a pain. Yeah.
No,
I like the analytics thing, though. I'm going to take a note to have our team look at that as well.
Yes, exactly. You can it's a JavaScript snippet. You install it on your site. You don't have to be using Cloudflare for your website. So if you don't want to, that's fine. And we will give you analytics about, who's, the volume of traffic you're getting, the number of clicks and all that kind of stuff.
Very cool stuff. So, John, you mentioned you don't have to be a Cloudflare customer to use the API here.
Is it just like a little Java code snippet we put
Yeah,
in
a
there?
little bit of JavaScript. Yeah, you can go on
JavaScript?
Yeah, you just pop it in there, and you can make it. There's kind of two ways to do it. One is to actually have it show a little thing in the like the Google has the little capture that says, but you don't actually have to do anything. You can have that style, or you can have it completely invisible, just like it does it in the background, and you decide that, depending on what you want. But it's a one-line, script insertion, and it's done.
And this is free of charge?
It's free of charge. Yes, this is part of our, help make the internet better. We think that captures. I mean, we use captures a lot ourselves, right? That was one of our technologies. We used reCAPTCHA for years as a way of detecting bots, and we knew that people hated it, and we're just like, and we hated it, and so we was like, we have to get rid of it. And once we got rid of it for ourselves, the scale we're operating, you're talking about millions of captures per day, millions of the now turnstile tests. We're like, this will just make life better for everybody. So you can just sign up for it. It's privacy preserving, replace captures, and we're starting to see it get included in frameworks. Like a sort of like a WordPress type thing. Where it's
I was going to ask next. Works in WordPress and some of the other
all these things. Yeah. It's a little piece of JavaScript. Yeah.
So look, this sounds too good to be true, and I'm old enough to know nothing is too good to be true, right? Very rarely.
Is Cloudflare capturing data somehow on this? Or
no, that's not the idea. There's two things, right? One thing is, we hope you love this so much. You're like, Cloudflare's a cool company. I'm going to use their $20 a month service or their $200 a month service or something, right? So, we because of the efficiency of our business, we can make this available to people. It also makes our capture thing better, right? So if we suddenly notice that this thing is getting bypassed in some way because it's being used so widely, then we're like, oh, we can improve it, right? And so that's one of the reasons why we have these things at scale. So it's helpful for us, right? Because then our use of turnstile becomes better. And we hope you might want to become a customer. And also, a large amount of what Cloudflare does, if you think about our brand around helping build a better internet, this tells that story really super clearly. And that's helpful for us. So in the sense, there's no like directly, oh yeah, they're building a secret profile of users and going to sell. No, and frankly, that's not the business we've ever been in. Our customers are people like you, right? Pay for the service, use it to protect their website, and that's great. And that pays for the rest of it.
Fantastic. So I guess the big question is, where do I go to get this?
You can go to the Cloudflare blog. There's a great blog on there about announcing Turnstile, and there's a landing page for this, which is cloudflare.com/turnstile, and sign up.
Fantastic.
Go for it. Get it.
John, man, what a great service for humanity you guys have done here. Thank you.
Well, I'm in London, right? Taxis aren't yellow in London. I can't identify.
No, they're black.
They're black. So it's like, identify the taxis. There are none.
Yeah. You know what? It's tough.
I just hope it gets adopted and that the days of me having to click those stupid pictures over and over and over again are behind me.
And honestly, I hope other people. This is not about Cloudflare necessarily being the one who provides this service. Maybe other capture providers can switch to something that isn't invasive and is privacy preserving, and that would be fantastic. And we'd all be happy about that too.
What could be next? Eliminating passwords?
Well, I mean, that's sort of starting to happen, isn't it? With passkey, right? That's beginning to happen, right? And so I think that finally, maybe we're going to get.
Yeah, those would be two scourges off of.
Yes, and real complexities for people, right? I mean, the thing about passwords is it worries people. People know they should have good passwords, but then they don't, and you're creating stress for people. It's like, as technologists, we need to find a solution for that.
Absolutely. I've had this discussion with some technologists over the months and years. Anyway, hey, John, we'd love to keep you on here. We're about out of time for this interview, but come back, keep us posted on what's going on at Cloudflare. Exciting, good things for people using the internet, and we'd love to report more on it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. John Graham coming on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, we're back here at the Open Source Summit Europe in Dublin. We're talking with Ross Mowry, who's the general manager for IBM Z. We'll be talking about Linux, mainframes, and sustainability. Hey Ross, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Glad to be in Dublin.
It is. Could be worse places to be, right?
Oh, I like it here.
It's a complicated topic these days, but to what degree are IT organizations starting to base sustainability issues as part of their decisions for deciding what platforms to use, or for that matter, re-platform things? What are you guys seeing?
What I'm seeing, especially over the last 18 months to 2 years, so this is really recent, is as corporate sustainability goals started to be put in place, sometimes by the board, sometimes by management, sometimes by both, that trickles down. And one of the areas that needs focus and is getting focus is the IT organization. So while we've designed servers for decades to be very electrically efficient, it never really was a selling point, to be quite honest. Now it's one of the selling points because a customer can make real material difference in their electrical usage in a relatively short amount of time, thus progressing their company towards their sustainability goals.
Utilization rates on traditional servers are not so high, so is that part of the problem? Is it just that we've been a little bit sloppy in how we think about workload deployments?
I think, I don't want to bash anybody too hard, but I think that utilization rates are not that high on a typical server, maybe 20 to 30%. If you push it, it'd be 40. But I think it's also the design of the servers. They were designed to be commodity. They're designed to be put together quickly, assembled from different manufacturers' parts and put together. And a holistic design of the system really wasn't in place. Our servers are different, right? We designed them from the silicon up. So we know every circuit that's in there, every line of microcode. And one of the things, so we optimize for performance. We're always innovating and driving higher levels of security built into the server. But we always looked at electrical usage and power usage, right? And we control it because, again, we design the server end to end. And I think that's now, so I don't want to point fingers or anything, it's just that if you're going to really take sustainability and electrical efficiency, to heart, you've got to start to think about the end-to-end solution, not just a component or a card or a board. You've got to look at the entire solution.
How much progress are you making with the platform that runs Linux only versus the mainframe environment where I can run Linux as a subset of ZOS, and which one do customers seem to prefer and why?
Well, the ZOS platform is really the heart of our business, and it's because of its transaction capability, its data handling capability, and then all the other things you can do around having the transaction and the operational data there. And we've seen tremendous take-up of our last 2 generations of servers. We've seen great growth in their usage and the capacity installed globally. And I think that this generation, that was the Linux system that was announced yesterday, and the Z version of it, which was announced about 90 days ago, I think we're going to see great uptick with them as well, continued. Why? Workloads are growing. as the pandemic hit and everybody kind of huddled at home, at least that's what I did, and we did more and more online, right? You hear about the digital transformation. Well, the digital transformation that was going to take a decade, I think happened in about two years during the pandemic. So what does that do? That drives up transaction rates of everything, of delivery of goods, of paying for goods, of searching for goods. It drives all those transactions up. So again, our systems are built to sustain huge spikes in transaction rates and things like that. Our systems are designed to add capacity from hands off. They can just bring on additional capacity. And those systems were exercised quite, I would say, quite a lot during the pandemic as transaction rates grew through the roof, basically. As we come out of the pandemic, I still think we're going to see big fluctuations, and I still think we're going to see growth. But what we're seeing now, even more so than before, is clients consolidating Linux workloads that may be on a private cloud or just in a server farm or even on a public cloud. They're consolidating a lot back onto Linux on Z or Linux One. And the workloads they're bringing back are two flavors. One is they want to be closer to the operational data that's produced by Z, whether it's an analytics workload, or they're just taking advantage of, again, the efficiency, speed, and security of Z running thousands and thousands of Linux workloads all at the same time at a much higher performance rate than an industry standard server, but also, as you said, at the server is being pushed much harder, probably running at 90 to 95% utilization. So it just economically makes sense for them to consolidate from tens of thousands of servers and sprawl onto something that's much more electrically efficient, space efficient, carbon footprint efficient, et cetera.
Do you think more people are willing to have that conversation in an economic downturn because they are feeling more pressure about the total cost of IT?
I think the governments and large companies, whether it's an economic downturn or upturn, they have to maintain some amount of momentum with their systems. They have to replace them on some basis. Could be every couple of years, could be every decade, but there's some reason they're going to have to replace them. And again, with the huge digital transformation changing the nature of transactions, we've seen clients having to upgrade and put in new systems much more, and again, bring more work, if you would, back to the mainframe. Seems counterintuitive. Maybe people thought everyone was going to the cloud, and as I tell people, the cloud isn't a destination, it's an architecture. And so lots of times that cloud can be easily implemented and much more efficiently implemented on a cluster of mainframes.
One of the things we don't talk enough about probably is that there's a lot of failure rates on those industry standard servers. So in the age of digital business transformation, are more people looking at the reliability of the platform as well?
They are, and government and regulators are doing the same thing as well. And so our hardware has 7 nines of availability, so it's pretty rock solid. But our clients still will have multiple instances of these servers that can, in real time, shift workloads between them in case there's something catastrophic that happens, a power outage or something big like that. So I think resiliency and reliability in this stage of digital transformation, people are not so tolerant anymore, right? If they want to click their mouse, they want to hit their phone, they want to get a response, and I can't blame them. I do too. But again, government regulators are also pushing, especially the financial services sector, to really to new heights of availability for their systems.
What is the cost per entry these days? Because it used to be for a mainframe, you had to be in what we call the millionaires club, where you had $1 million in your budget for IT. Has that come down? Is it more accessible? Where are we on that curve?
So I think it depends how you want to consume it, because you can consume a mainframe in a lot of different ways. You could purchase it, in which case it's a larger capital purchase. You could probably get in the game for $300,000. Not $1 million, but not a small amount of money. But there's service providers that will sell you a slice of a mainframe, right? Virtualization, the cloud model. And so if you just want to rent the space, rent the time, you can do that, and you can get in at a very, very, very granular level. And we even have mainframes in the cloud now that allow clients to come in, or developers to come in, and like our Linux community cloud is free. A developer can get on and kick the tires and have it. So I think we've kind of lowered the barrier to entry. Another thing you saw, Home Lending Pal was here speaking on stage. They're one of the startups in our startup accelerator. We've got more than 100 fintechs, health techs, and reg techs in our startup accelerator, and they're all running off of the IBM public cloud. So depends how you want to consume it, depends how fine a granularity. We love people in the Millionaires Club, but you don't have to be anymore to get access to a mainframe technology.
And a lot of people who have ZOS are running Linux workloads for essentially for free because the way the pricing is modeled.
However they want to use the capacity, I love it. And they are putting Linux on because Linux and ZOS can complement each other very well, especially if you're going after packaged applications and things like that are just right there on Linux, and you can run it next to ZOS. Because of the performance, going to be being next to ZOS is going to be your best performance by far, but also it puts it into the scope of recovery for a system. Whereas if the systems are on separate whole server instances, then the recovery of something, say after a catastrophic failure, and moving a workload across a country, like banks are required to, right? They've got to be able to show that they can move their workloads in a very short amount of time and run for months from another data center to show the resilience. So by having Linux and ZOS together on the mainframe, it just makes it that much more easy to move workloads if that's what you want to do.
To your point about we have lots of transaction processing on the mainframe, people use that forever. It doesn't seem they want to rewrite those applications, and yet we are accessing them with other applications through APIs. So I guess my question to you is, are things becoming more latency sensitive in general, and that's part of the whole architecture thought?
Well, that's a long question you asked there, and the reason I say that is because I see clients at many different, I would say, levels of maturity when it comes to modern application architecture. Yes, they could have written COBOL applications. They could even have done it with punch cards, 40 years ago, right? And those applications would still be running. And then we did open things up by API enabling our subsystems so the clients could get to their applications and their data. But I think in today's world, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing some clients move to a fully modern DevOps paradigm, right? They're using open source development tools, whether it's Visual Studio and Get, you name it, they've gone to all open source technology for their DevOps. They've changed the way they develop applications, and they're writing in Golang or Java or you name your favorite language, and that's how they're starting to either enhance current applications or write new ones. You can have Java and PL1 and COBOL and Golang all coexist very easily on a mainframe because it do run so many different languages. And I'm seeing a lot of clients, again, because of the productivity and flexibility of the modern DevOps approach, and then wanting to modernize, wanting to get skills right out of college that could get on and learn the tools or already know the tools. So there's a lot of advantage. So I'm seeing clients around the world at different stages. Some are still back with green screens, and some are, I would say, fully modern and moved into the modern era and are doing containerized workloads and running Kubernetes on the mainframe. Because you can run containers you can run a container platform on Linux on a mainframe, or you can run it within ZOS as well. You can run containers in ZOS. So if you want to, wherever you want to move your containers, if that makes sense for the workload, it's that flexible.
Mainframe sites and organizations have a long history with waterfall processes. Are they switching that out for DevOps, or is it kind of living side by side? What is the? I'm
seeing the customers that are the ones that are really, I would say, leading edge. So maybe the top 200 to 300 in the world are all moving to DevOps, all of them. I think it depends on. It sometimes depends what country they're in, what skills are available, how much risk they take, and I'm not going to get into different cultures, but some cultures are very risk adverse, and others don't mind pushing the envelope a little bit. But I'm seeing all the leaders around the world, regardless of what continent they're on, moving fully to DevOps because, again, that's the modern productive paradigm. And if you want to get, again, young employees coming out of college, that's probably what they're going to be used to anyway. So why would you bring them back to the old waterfall days?
So in that context, is the mainframe really just yet another node on a distributed system, and it's just one of many?
Just a big node. A big, powerful, secure node. Yes, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah. Speaking of security, are people reviewing security of applications in general and starting to look at the underlying platform, and does that bring them back to a mainframe conversation?
Well, it's actually interesting now that most people have realized that your data's not secure. No matter how many moats and walls you put up, your data is you'd have to assume that your data is going to get breached. So what they're going to encrypting everything and running the applications and the data in confidential computing containers, which basically lock out human intervention, even with super administrative, credentials. So that maybe once you lock these systems down, they are just going to run, and you can't be hacked. And so I see encrypting all the data constantly. I see more and more of that. I mean, 5 years ago, there was a study done, and I think it was 4% of corporate data around the world was encrypted. I don't know where it's at these days, but the customers I talk to are trying to move to encrypting all of their sensitive data, every bit of it, wherever it's created and how it's stored. So that's one way to protect things. And the next thing then is when you're running the application, is it running in a container that you trust? Is it running somehow containerized so that the technology will keep a hacker out? And that's why they're coming to mainframes, because we have got that technology. We've had it for a while. This new Linux One Emperor 4 system is actually our 5th generation of secure enclave technology. So it's very mature and can lock down the world's applications and data.
Just about every application we see being built today takes advantage of some form of a machine learning algorithm or maybe a deep learning algorithm. So where does that AI workload sit on a mainframe, and how is that kind of different?
So to me, there's a whole continuum from analytics and advanced analytics, and you move into machine learning, you move into deep learning, right? And we've been doing advanced analytics on the platform for decades. But now, as clients really want to move into machine learning and deep learning, you have to have more and more, I think, acceleration in the hardware, because the software algorithms just get that much more complicated, and they will by nature, the speed of light is a limitation. They will take longer to run. And so you've seen specialized accelerators for AI like GPUs, right, which kind of you attach via a bus to a processor. But what we did in this generation in the Telum chip that's in the Linux Emperor 4, Linux One Emperor 4, is we put inference acceleration right in the microprocessor. So there's no going across a bus. There's a millisecond or less latency for every single inference you do. And one system can do 300 billion inferences a day. So it's basically, you've got an unlimited accelerated AI capability right at your fingertips. That is a game changer, I think, for clients that are going to look to AI. And the use cases we're seeing these days, the natural one is like fraud detection and fraud prevention. That's a natural one, whether it's payment systems, credit cards, claims processing and insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera. That's a natural one. That's a very big payout. But I think there are hundreds and hundreds of use cases that are going to get uncovered and are being uncovered as clients now think, oh, I don't have to buy special hardware. I don't have to do anything special. It doesn't affect my performance of my system at all to do AI. I think we're going to see a much more rapid adoption of deep learning, inference leverage on mainframes. And we've been working with a number of companies across the globe for 2 years now as we prepared bringing out these processors that are based on the Telum microprocessor. And they're very excited about having this capability at their fingertips. Imagine, free AI acceleration basically at your fingertips, just like we put an encryption engine in the Z14 about 5 years ago, right? So that made pervasive encryption. You could just encrypt everything, no performance hit, encrypt, decrypt, just pretend like it's a natural flow. It's not something special. That's what I think we've done to AI. So I'm very excited about what's going to happen over these next couple of years.
One of the biases that are out there is that people feel that the folks who have mainframe skills are retiring. They're going to go hang out on the beach somewhere and they won't be able to replace those guys. So what is the level of skills required to manage in the mainframe environment today? And how deep do I have to be, or can I just be your average mere mortal?
So it's a great question, and it's one that's been around for a long time. This isn't a new question, right? And I think we're doing two fundamental things to change the game on this. One is making the application development paradigm something natural, and that everyone pretty much that's coming out of college or even out of high school is used to, by using the popular open source tools for application development. So kind of like take away that barrier to entry, because the tooling everyone would be used to. Obviously the application logic you have to learn, doesn't matter what platform it's on, but you'll take away that barrier to entry on the tooling. Away from application programming, then there's like the system program that's got to set up and monitor and manage the system. We continue to do more and more leveraging machine learning and AI, having the machines set up and manage themselves. Now we're not fully there yet, but we've been taking big strides to have these systems be much more self-managing than ever before. Again, lowering that skill need for the system program, the system administrator. And the final thing is, what I'm trying to drive is just simplification in everything we do when it comes to the hardware in particular. Remember, the paradigm of the great thing about a mainframe is that it runs applications that are 50 years old. The bad thing about a mainframe is some of those bells and whistles and knobs and dials that were put in 50 or 40 or 30 years ago are just archaic. And so we have to go and remove them. And so what we try to do is, if there's a set of tuning parameters, let's say for performance, and they were called SRM parameters, we basically rewrote ZOS to have this thing called a workload manager. So a client could specify a policy in the English language, and that would then set the performance tuning. So you didn't have to be a wizard and get in there and tune it yourself. The next step of workload manager is not client setting a policy. It's the system will come with a set of models that have been trained already on the client's data, their performance data, and will automatically tune itself, and the client won't have to do anything. So that's what we're talking about. Go from remove the old bells and whistles and knobs and make the system so that it tunes itself.
They say seeing is believing, and a lot of people are still skeptical. So short of configuring an entire machine, how do I go find out whether or not all this stuff works? Are there some places that I can just go play?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you wanted to just get on and play with Linux on mainframe, there's the Linux Community Cloud. We also have, if you're an independent software vendor, we have access to systems that independent software vendors can use. So the developers would use some of the external clouds that we also have on the IBM public cloud. There's a number of different portals that you can go into and play, learn, try things. Crash, it's okay. It's a test system, right? And then the other way is we have hands-on labs that we will come and work with you at your site. We'll do it remotely, whatever you want. We have expert labs that will come and work with you and will help you and show you the best way to kick the tires. We're happy to do that. We're proud of our technology. We want you to kick the tires.
All right, cool. Hey, you heard it here, folks. Mainframe, it's not your grandfather's machine. It's a whole new world. Ross, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
All right, and we'll be back in a minute.
This is Techstrong TV.
All right, guys, we're back live at the Open Source Foundation Europe event in Dublin. We're here with Tim Serowitz, who's the Director of Training for all things open source, and in particular, quantum computing is our subject today. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Appreciate it.
What is the state of quantum computing right now? I mean, we see lots of advances, people talking about it all the time. No one's quite sure what the applications are, what code to write for it, and how it might actually play out. But give us a little update on where we are.
You know, it's a good question, because there's so many people working on it, spending trillions of dollars now And that, with the T, you add it all up, there's a lot of people that will talk about what's happened that may not have actually happened. Recently, a big company said we've achieved quantum advantage, meaning we did something a supercomputer would take 10,000 years to do. Well, it turns out that what it does is a algorithm built for that quantum computer. So it's not realistic, it's not useful, and another research team did it in 200 hours. So what was years of where we've done it has now been undone. And that's the history of quantum computing. We've done something only to have somebody else say, not really. So where we are now is we can use a real quantum computer. We can entangle qubits. These are quantum particles. Making use of those entangled qubits, that's still what we're working on. A researcher just said they were up to 13 entangled qubits. And we would need hundreds, perhaps millions, to have a quantum computer in what people would call a quantum computer, a useful quantum computer. So we're at the cusp of it. My thought is we need to hit the point where the quantum computer can actually help us solve the other issues of quantum computers.
That kind of sounded like Dr. Heal Yourself.
To some extent, yes.
As a developer, how much do I need to go into the depths of that? Or am I just going to be presented with a bunch of APIs and SDKs some days that I just invoke and it happens to be done by a quantum computer on the other side, and I'll be like, well, that's nice, but I didn't know. Look, Ma, no hands.
Absolutely. That is the absolute goal, and there are teams working on it. Today, you can get involved with quantum computers and not have to know anything about quantum mechanics. You can just call a library. The issues are, whereas with transistors, we had a 20-year period where, hey, we have a vacuum tube, now we have a transistor, and then let's write a couple libraries and more libraries. That's all happening in parallel. And as many things, if you try changing 10 different layers simultaneously, every time you change one layer, well, then this layer has to change, and that's what's happening, is so much is happening that, yes, you could go and be a physicist and work on the entanglement of these things. On the other hand, there's people who are writing libraries, and there's people who are writing languages so that you and I wouldn't have to know anything but just, if config this and do that, and it magically works. So all of it's happening simultaneously. As well, with the advancements of the cloud, there's even a further abstraction where I won't even know that my local machine made a call to a quantum computer. So your phone, for example, for quantum encryption, you don't need a quantum computer in your hand. It will just call to one, figure out the equation, bring it back to you. So all of the above is true simultaneously, sort of like quantum.
To your earlier point, are we not being innovative enough and exploratory enough? Because it seems like we're trying to prove that we can take existing workloads and run them faster on a quantum machine, when in reality we should be doing things we couldn't think about doing before that weren't possible, and we should expand our horizons a little bit.
And there are people who spend time doing that, thinking about it. And there's some great organizations that do that. To call out one that has been very helpful to me in my learning process is an organization called StrangeWorks, and they call themselves the Switzerland of quantum. They're not choosing any winners, they're just telling you how it works. And they spend time thinking about that. Probably the best explanation of what quantum will be is imagine that you want to go someplace. So you can run some speed, you can take a car some speed, 60 miles an hour, a bullet train goes 300 miles an hour, and what quantum is using a space shuttle. That yes, it can go faster, but a bullet train doesn't leave the Earth. That rocket ship that got you there in no time at all, you can also go to the moon with. So it's going to be transformational, not just faster. Most people see it as faster. It is that, hopefully, but it's also different. The way that the information is actually gathered, again, without getting too deep into the quantum mechanics behind it, we'll be capable of doing things we don't understand yet. So, for example, there are some theorists who might be a little bit out there on the leading edge who say that where the answers are coming from, we'll ask a question of a quantum machine and we'll answer what we should have asked. Now, a finite machine can't do that. Like you say, what's 2 + 2? You get 4 every time. And this would come back with the answer like, well, you're really trying to solve this problem. Here's the answer to what you should have asked me. And that's where quantum will probably be. That's going to be the change, is that it's going to be like a person. That when I say, what's the weather like? And they answer back, you won't need an umbrella today. Because that's what you really wanted to know, but you asked for one thing, you got the answer instead.
So is that going to be the ultimate manifestation of what we're looking for with artificial intelligence? Because the issue with AI is you kind of still need to know what questions to ask.
Absolutely.
And if I knew the question to ask in the first place, I probably could figure out where I was going to get the answer anyway.
I think there's a strong argument. I happen to believe this argument that we won't have great AI until we have quantum.
The security community is flipping out about quantum.
Yes.
The issue, as I understand it, is like the algorithms could be theoretically broken by a quantum machine, or soon will be, and then we need to replace all the algorithms with something that's quantum ready. Where are we on that journey? What's going on?
Well, you should worry, and this is something I spend a lot of time talking about, so anybody slows down near me, I jump on them. We should all embrace security agility. Right now, to a large extent, organizations with their security software, they do have some security mandated. This is a good thing. But they'll call out, let's say, 128-bit encryption, which is good for today. And a lot of organizations are like, well, we'll worry about it when it happens. It might never happen. The problem is there's bad actors in the world, and those bad actors can collect your encrypted data now and then decrypt it later. So you can't actually wait until quantum is useful, because maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 5 years, but as an organization, would you want to give a bad actor all of your information that's 5 years old? And most places would say absolutely not. So two things really need to happen. Is we need to start today, we need to start yesterday, and NIST just came out with 4 new encryption protocols. They're trying to standardize it because everybody's running in their own area and trying to herd cats. There's now 4 new, and they're working on a whole nother set of standards for encryption that are quantum resistant. And this is part of that, like, I'm going to answer the question you meant to ask. We don't know how good quantum will be. That yes, on a mathematical perspective, 256-bit or 512-bit encryption should still take quantum a very long time to decrypt, unless we can achieve that otherworldly that does something we don't even know yet, that figures out, 512, 1024-bit encryption, got it. So we don't know. So not only should we double, triple our current encryption, what we should do is plan for swapping out our encryption standards themselves. So don't hard code anything, have it be like a library call. Go use security tool and plan for that to be swapped out. Almost nobody does that, which means governments, Fortune 500 companies, they're looking at a decade or more to change their encryption, if they even know what they're using. So systemically, culturally, this is a huge issue. You can see the wave forming, and nobody's looking at the ocean.
Right. And there's a guy named Murphy who says that for sure this is all going to go the wrong way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's a rule. Yes, absolutely.
You guys have launched these training programs. What do they consist of? What can people tap into? And what should they expect? And how do they get started?
We do have a course. I happen to have written the course, and it's Quantum 101. The course was written in conjunction with the World Bank and several different people in the industry. I interview these various people on quantum computing. The course was written for leaders of developing countries, of large organizations, of people who aren't looking at the ocean. And it was to educate them, this is the wave that's coming. Because in order to meet this need, we should really be educating our kids. We should know, it shouldn't be just, here's your iPad. It's like, here's an iPad and here's what an entangled bit is. This is what a qubit is. Because we're going to have a cultural change, just like the transistor. We didn't see you holding a cell phone and having a self-driving car. We didn't see that when the transistor was invented. That's what's going to happen to us, and our technology needs are going to be like that. So this course is meant as a very basic overview, primarily for non-technical people. And the idea is you take this 3 or 4 hour course, and you should be looking at the wave. You may not know what caused it or what's going to happen, but at least you've turned and said, oh, now I get it. And it's freely available. So you can go to our website at linuxfoundation.org or training.linuxfoundation.org, and it's Quantum Computing 101, and sign up for it and take it.
How long before our kids look at us like we're archaic because we were using these conventional programs back in the day, and they'll pat us on our head as they're going to work?
It will absolutely happen. My 11-year-old is going to do the same things I did when my parents' VCR was blinking 12 all the time. Like, it's not that hard. You just hold these 3 buttons and you keep tapping this 4th one. Obviously, it's going to be like that. And it's going to be one of those things, like I mentioned, your cell phone will just have a call to a quantum machine someplace and do something for us. that we won't even realize, and you and I may not understand it, but absolutely a 10-year-old today will use it when, at least by the time they're our age.
We see a lot of announcements from various countries and agencies and companies talking about, how many qubits they put together at what level of performance. Are we involved in some sort of quantum computing arms race without knowing about it?
Absolutely. There are people who don't want you to know what they're doing, and those are for the same security reasons I just mentioned. Also, if you think about it, if I'm a bad actor, I wouldn't want you to know that I can read your stuff yet. And there's an argument to be made that with a functional quantum computer, I could get through whatever your security is and then basically move your research backwards. And it's sort of like the first person to invent time travel is going to be able to go back in time and do whatever they want. We could be there with quantum machines already. There's different organizations. They announced a quantum machine, then it kind of disappeared suddenly. It's not available anymore, but they have a simulator. Those kinds of things always make me wonder, what did they discover? Either did it fail and they don't want anybody to know, or did they make such a huge advancement that they're capitalizing it right now, and they're going to wait until it leaks and people figure it out before they actually come forward and say, we did it. There's two driving factors. One, bad actors trying to take advantage of it, and then people who want to continue funding, maybe they've gone down the wrong path, but they're not going to talk about that. I mean, that's not the way to further funding, and it's tough to know what's real and what is aspiration.
All right, guys, you heard the paradox here. If this doesn't work out as planned, it's because somebody from the future came back and just messed it all up anyway. Hey, Timothy, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll be back in a minute.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
Hello, friends, and welcome to The Lab, a monthly show where we look in the latest and greatest developments in software development, DevOps, and the cloud. I'm your host, Brendan O'Leary, and I'm coming to you today from a seasonably warm, very nice weather, Annapolis, Maryland, on the East Coast of the United States. For those who don't know me, I'm a staff developer evangelist at GitLab, which means I get to talk to amazing folks throughout the software engineering space about what it really means to get code shipped into production. And today we have a great episode for you today. The GitLab 15.5 release brings new cutting-edge DevOps capabilities to GitLab's One DevOps platform. And so we have, as always, have exciting new product updates that are going to help developers and operators collaborate and deliver software more securely. And I'm going to be thrilled to dive into some of those new updates. With 15.5 comes updates to our environment overview page, a lot of API improvements that I think will be really valuable for folks, and a lot more. We also have a new technology partnership with Firefly, a cloud asset management solution for DevOps and SRE teams. And today I have with me here a GitLab veteran and Firefly's VP of Marketing, Sydney Blake, who will join us later in the show to discuss this new partnership and what it means for DevOps teams. But before that, we'll dive into some key GitLab updates. So in GitLab 15.5, there's some fantastic updates, as I mentioned. One of the most critical ones, I think, is operational container scanning. So this is GitLab now supporting not only container scanning as you're building the container, right, which has been in GitLab for some time, but also vulnerability scanning of container images that are operational in your production Kubernetes environments. So you can set up scanning either through the configuration file that you use for your GitLab agent for Kubernetes, or creating a scan execution policy that requires a regular cadence of scanning. And so this will make sure that not only when you build your containers are they secure, but as you're running them and new things may come up, new CVs are released, you can scan those containers on a regular basis and understand if they need to be updated to patch any security issues. Related to this kind of is the ability to now search by environment name in the environment's overview page. So previously on the environment's overview page, it was just kind of a list, didn't have any search functionality, which if you only have a few environments like production and staging and maybe Canary, that's not that big a deal. But if you're building a new environment, maybe for each, each branch, each merge request, so that you can test the application before merging it, or if you have a lot of other longer-lived environments, maybe you want to be able to search and find that specific environment, understand what's been deployed there, and find that. So that's really exciting to see. Another feature that I think is really exciting are a lot of updates to the GitLab API. Now, the GitLab API is already very powerful, but these updates in the 15.5 release, I think, make it even more so. So one is a new projects API endpoint that returns a list of groups where you can transfer a specified project. So for transferring projects, you can select, whatever namespace that you have access to as the user. But now for API-based transfers, you can find out, what are those namespaces available before trying to execute that transfer. You can also modify a user's commit email through the user's API. Used to only be able to do that in the UI as the user themselves, but now if you're managing a lot of users, administrators can use that user's API to modify the commit email address and perform bulk actions if there's a need for that. You also can expose the job token scope status. So this is a feature that's been around since GitLab 14.4, where users can limit the access scope of a CI job token, right? So that gives you a much more secure workflow, right? That CI job token can be used by the CI job to perform, various API and other calls in GitLab. And so limiting the scope of that makes a lot of sense in many environments. But previously, if you wanted to figure out if this setting was enabled in a project, you'd have to manually go through the project settings and find that. But in 15.5, you can check the response from the jobs, deployments, and environments API endpoints to programmatically figure out, what was the status of the setting for those various environments. So that's really exciting. Some other, maybe more minor enhancements, but still important, I think, include an admin area setting to prevent users from creating new groups. So now GitLab administrators can, disable the ability for people to create top-level groups. This is, valuable when, administrators can choose, are we going to, manage groups in some sort of automated controlled way, or allow users to create their own groups kind of at will. And previously, you could do this through the file system on the GitLab Ruby file, GitLab.rb file that has configuration settings, but now it's available right in the admin area of GitLab. And a minor but important enhancement that I'm excited about are new filters available for personal access tokens API. So previously, when you called the API to find your personal access tokens, it was relatively basic, but now you can filter the results like on things when was the token last used, if it was revoked or not, and what the name of the token was. And so this again provides users and administrators more useful information about personal access tokens, which of course are important to securing your GitLab instance. And again, these are only a handful of the many, many updates in GitLab this month. If you'd like to see more about GitLab 15.5, I definitely would encourage you to go to the GitLab blog and read that full list of updates. Now, I'm excited to dive into GitLab's newly announced partnership with Firefly that we talked about at the top of the show. And this is with none other than the one and only Cindy Blake, who's previously joined the lab as a guest and has a lot to tell us about this new partnership announcement. Sydney, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brendan. I'm happy to be back.
Great, yeah. And so you've been the lead on this new announcement, Sydney. Can you tell our listeners a little bit more about what Firefly is and what this partnership with GitLab means?
Sure, of course. So Firefly is a cloud infrastructure management solution. We take a holistic approach to solving cloud complexity, ensuring that your cloud is efficiently managed and properly governed for more reliable, secure, and predictable environment. So getting, unpacking that a little bit in terms of what does that mean? We enable teams to rediscover their entire cloud footprint, to understand which parts of your cloud are codified as IAC versus unmanaged. We help you detect and remediate drifts and manage a single inventory of all of your cloud resources across multiple clouds, multiple accounts, and even Kubernetes deployments. Our goal is to provide businesses with a peace of mind to avoid costly downtimes, minimize risk of failure by mitigating drifts, and replacing manual effort with automated processes that enable faster feature release with less effort and more consistent results. And we've just announced that we're now members of GitLab's partner program as a technology partner, which that's going to further enable DevOps teams to manage their complete cloud infrastructure alongside their application code with greater visibility and control, just like they get for application code with DevOps.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's really exciting to have Firefly on as a partner. And, I was looking, GitLab's been building up this Alliance Partner Network. I think it's very much in line with our everyone can contribute mission. And in the last year, actually, we saw an almost 300% increase in Alliance partners onboarded, 292% in fact. And our approach is, extremely collaborative, right? It's one of our key values, as you're well aware. And that's helped us really create this, cloud native, cloud agnostic DevOps ecosystem with, integrations and services that support, the entire software lifecycle. Mm-hmm. And so, Sydney, I'd like to hear more on, what Firefly. I think I understand what it brings, but why is now the right time for this partnership, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, cloud is becoming super complex. With a surge of cloud native applications and the burden of managing infrastructure, it's really increased exponentially. In fact, we have a survey going on right now that's proving that point already. More companies are using multiple cloud providers, and according to a CNCF survey, 96% of those surveyed are using or consider using Kubernetes. So you've got a lot of different parts that have to be managed. And so to meet the primary challenge of governing that, thinking about who can access what changed and keeping all of that straight, organizations have been codifying their cloud assets. So things like Kubernetes clusters, AWS security groups, identity access management, S3 storage buckets, and all of those things into infrastructure as code, or IAC, using tools like Terraform, Pulumi, Helm, and such. The reason why is IAC helps teams more efficiently manage, deploy, and govern cloud infrastructures. So in a DevOps environment, it helps developers be more self-sufficient to efficiently provision the cloud resources that they need, while at the same time employing guardrails for consistency, reliability, and less risk. And once codified as IAC, these cloud resources can be version controlled and governed with the same rigor as application software, all within a DevOps platform like GitLab.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, you talked about, infrastructure as code, and we hear folks talk about GitOps. Like, are these things that, are now kind of table stakes and essential? And, if so, why is that? What's the benefit to organizations for trying to, make these investments?
Yeah, absolutely. For companies that are cloud forward with multiple cloud providers, and we see hundreds and even thousands of cloud service accounts, achieving governance for that is super difficult. So cloud and Kubernetes management tools that exist are often siloed, maybe only addressing part of the cloud footprint, or they may have a very narrow focus on just inventory or just FinOps. Others focus on drift or on security. And we really believe that a holistic cloud management will improve all of these areas. In addition, a lot of people focus on custom applications developed through DevOps teams, but reliability is important for your entire cloud infrastructure. It's not only important for custom software, but for mission critical business processes that depend upon commercial off-the-shelf SaaS applications. And that area is often overlooked, the infrastructure that comes with those. So managing everything as IAC using this GitOps approach can improve reliability, governance, and control. And, the only shortcoming is that it can only address cloud resources that have been codified. You can't manage what you can't see. So Firefly's partnership with GitLab takes these principles a step further by applying the automated and policy-driven software management techniques that GitLab is so good at to the entire cloud footprint, including unmanaged assets and SaaS infrastructures, essentially enabling an automated and governed end-to-end cloud ops.
It makes sense. Yeah, and it's exciting to hear, kind of taking that to the next level with GitLab. Like you said, you've got to, if you can't manage what you don't know about. So that makes a lot of sense. And so before we wrap up, Sydney, maybe you could talk about some of the more specific functionalities and integrations that GitLab and Firefly's joint users can, expect from our partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. With this partnership, there's two key integrations that I encourage listeners to try out. You can go to gofirefly.io and give it a try. These are going to help you meet best practices for cloud asset management and will help you automate your IAC processes. So first, we can help you transform cloud resources into IAC automatically. So we turn unmanaged cloud resources into things like Terraform, Pulumi, Helm, whatever your favorite is, and go a step further by creating a merge request automatically so that you can, within your control when you choose to do so, push that change directly to your GitLab repo, where you're managing your IAC configuration files. And secondly, we help you detect and fix configuration drift. It's not enough to just find it. You also need to know how to fix it. So Firefly continuously scans your IAC states and your actual cloud configuration to find misalignments and then alerts you immediately. It goes a step further by suggesting the fix for the drift according to best practices, and again, creating that GitLab MR for you. We believe that the path to a better optimized, more secure, and more reliable cloud environment requires that holistic effort based on policy-driven cloud asset management. And it's only natural to combine these capabilities with GitLab for the one DevOps platform to manage your applications and your infrastructure.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks, Sydney, so much for coming. We're so happy that you could join us on the lab again. Always appreciate your insights, and I'm looking forward to what comes next of these tighter integrations. And so again, if you want to learn more about Firefly, you can check out gofirefly.io. And if you want to learn more about GitLab's partnership announcement with Firefly, the GitLab 15 announcement, and more, you can check out GitLab's website, about.gitlab.com. So thanks so much again for watching today. You can find me on the internet as @O'LearyCrew most places. Twitter's where I spend most of my time, so if you have an idea for a future episode or want to discuss anything from today's episode, my DMs are open. I'd be happy to talk to you. Again, the lab is published monthly, so thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next month in the lab. Stay safe.
Looking for a live conference focused on the tools, technologies, and practices most important to your business? Innotech conferences are live one-day business and technology conferences highlighting the latest in trends for IT leaders, developers, and IT professionals. Each event combines education, innovation, peer-to-peer networking, and the latest technology and business solutions for a diverse IT-focused audience. Initech conferences occur throughout the year in strategic regional locations, bringing together technology professionals from various industries to learn about the solutions, practices, and tools impacting their day-to-day work and gain insight into what's to come. Presenters at Initech conferences are selected and curated to ensure each session provides the most up-to-date and relevant information without any hype. Whether you're interested in digital transformation, cybersecurity, cloud, IT leadership, or DevOps, Initech conferences deliver. 2022 events are scheduled to be held in Austin, Dallas, Oklahoma City, Houston, and Washington, D.C. Initech conferences are produced by Techstrong Live and powered by Techstrong Group.
Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Cody J. Brown here with some more upcoming programs happening at Techstrong Learning. So we're jumping straight to Thursday morning, November 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern. Lee Faust, Global Field CTO for GitLab, will walk us through some advanced Git techniques aimed at helping platform engineers integrate security and operations best practices into their CI/CD pipelines. Users of GitLab will not want to miss Git workflows for platform engineers. Immediately following, Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, speakers from Dynatrace and LaunchDarkly are joining us to review how to make use of existing tools in the AWS marketplace to help teams quickly and securely deliver reliable features to customers. Save your spot now for observability for cloud-native progressive delivery. And finally, Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern, Nudge Security and Techstrong Research are tag teaming debunking the stupid user myth in security. Our speakers will review a recent survey that indicates new approaches need to be taken to improve security compliance with a remote workforce. So that's all I've got for you today, but we'll be back Thursday with some more programs happening next week at Techstrong Learning, so stay tuned.
Previously on Engineering the Change.
It's kind of like being on a football team. You got to make cuts to the roster, right? But we got to take it down to 3 finalists. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
So,
she's in.
Yeah. But there was, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this. I give extra bonus points to people who can write well and can express themselves, and Donald did express himself. All right, so let's go through this then. Stephanie Sanchez, Donald Brazil, and Carly Duvel are our 3 finalists for this cohort's Engineering the Change Scholarship.
Engineering the Change has literally changed the lives of scholarship winners. Here are our past recipients.
My name is Victoria Roas. I am an immigrant from Brazil. I came to this country when I was 10 years old.
My name is Drew Johnson. I'm a full-stack software engineer.
My name is Alina Maluk. I'm from Ukraine. I'm the winner of scholarship from 2 cohorts before me.
The Engineering of Change scholarship that I won last year was life-changing.
I really poured my soul and told my story to them, and a few weeks later I got a call from Alan, and it was, I even cried on the phone, I think. And it was like a life-changing moment.
The program at Boca Code was amazing. It was easy for me with zero experience to learn the fundamentals of software development.
My career has completely changed from barely being able to, hold down a job to now being sought after by some of the biggest tech companies in the world.
Boca Code has built me up.
I got a job at hot fintech software company at the day of graduation.
I think that becoming a software engineer has been one of the most rewarding things in my life.
I am Carly Duberval, mother of 2 amazing children. I have a bachelor degree in accounting.
My name is Donald Brazil. I was born in Haiti. I was raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Growing up, I've always been interested in technology.
Hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm originally from Haiti. I've resided in Miami for wherever it feels. I currently have a degree in psychology, and I enjoy helping people.
I migrated recently to Florida because of insecurity and political issue.
I fell into software engineering as something I would love to pursue.
I feel like there is a void that that I still have. There's something tugging at me because I feel like I have not challenged myself to reach my full potential.
Here in US, my degree is not accepted. I need to work for my family duties.
Winning this scholarship is a great opportunity for me to finally, pursue that career in software engineering. And, I would love to, give back to those who were in my position where they were completely lost and didn't really have any guidance.
My goal is to be a vessel to other people, other underrepresented communities.
Without money and resources, I can't afford to go to Boca College.
And being a finalist is an amazing opportunity. I would never have thought I would have been even considered.
This field, I will be good at it. And I have an opportunity to make an impact on my community and the world.
If I won this scholarship, I will share my knowledge with other Black women, immigrants who share my faith.
I would love to, have the opportunity at the end of the day to showcase those who believe in me, and then, help others who also, would be in the same position that I am.
Because I know my contribution will make a lifelong impact on the world.
Thanks so much for joining us here for this interview today. And you know what? Making it to the finals for this is an accomplishment in and of itself. And I think it really talks about the kind of person you are. And, reading your essay, I was very, very impressed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In 5 years, I will be that software engineer who will help immigrants to achieve their dreams.
5 years, I would love to see myself, slowly opening my organization, have it on the ground, running. I just want to see myself helping others, just like others help me. I just want to give back to those who gave to me.
I see myself hopefully excelling in the field of software engineering, and I don't know exactly what my niche will be. So I know that I'm going to be excelling. I don't know exactly what it'll look like right now, but you guys will be proud.
Why do you want to be a software engineer? What's gonna make you stick through this at the end of the day?
I love it. I can do it. I will do it. Why I will do it? Because I love it.
It's just a great field to get into. The technology portion of it is just something I've always been interested in. As a kid, I've always been interested in computers, phones, gadgets.
I always felt a need to, or a pull toward doing something for someone else. And the field of engineering allows me to continue to do that, because whether it is in a medical field, the automotive field, just the world of entrepreneurship, there's just so many different ways that I can continue doing good and making an impact.
One of the things that's very near and dear to my heart is, equity, parity, gender diversity, and just diversity and parity on all levels, equality. And I wonder how do you envision going about doing that?
Like I did with my old career, I lift women to accounting in my country. I motivate them, I assist them, and help them to achieve, like I said, to achieve their dream, to be excellent in this field.
I would love to open an organization that can, give back to those and help guide them with the, the opportunities that, I'd had from this experience.
What drives you to do software engineering and not go back to something that you've already known and you've obviously been very successful at?
I would say now everything is technology. So why should I say in accounting? If the world is moving and everything now is tech. I have two brothers. One died in 2007. He was a senior software engineer. My youngest brother is a software engineer. Why not me? It's because I'm woman? No. I want it, I will do it.
At the moment right now, I work inventory for a home installation company. It's a pretty okay job, but it's not what I feel that I was meant to do.
The knowledge I have, I can pass on to other people. I know some of the challenges that our communities face. So with my knowledge and my mentorship, whether it's mentoring one person or just a group of people, exposing them to this field and to just other fields that exist where there's more to life than just what is in front of us. And I believe that I can be a bridge in that gap.
How do you feel like the scholarship is gonna do to you? Like, why is it important for you to win this?
I will share my knowledge with people, with women or immigrants, and use my knowledge to help them.
This scholarship is giving me that opportunity to show the world that I can do great things.
So this scholarship would definitely assist me in changing the trajectory of my life and hopefully where I can continue this same legacy in helping other people as well.
Your essay was amazing. Your answers here today were amazing. You really do represent what engineering the change is all about. Thanks for coming in today, and we can't wait to announce our winners soon.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and Media Ops CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and Techstrong.tv.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Dennis Zimmer, who's CTO for Code Notary. We're talking about immutable databases and use cases for that, and especially how they might apply in the land of application development and a lot of the issues that we're seeing in that context as well. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Every time anybody hears the word immutable database, they immediately think about blockchain, but you guys are not blockchain based at all. So maybe walk us through a little bit exactly what you guys do and how did you guys come up with a database that's immutable? Because it's been a problem for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And typically I start with a joke that an immutable database would be empty forever. But in our case, so that every data point that is being written to the database will be immutably written to it. So you cannot change or temper it afterwards without everybody else complaining about changed and tempered data. And that makes the database verifiable. So what we delivered is an open source immutable database that is so-called client verifiable. So you don't need to trust the database itself. You can always have a local state, or any application can hold a state of the immutable database. And this state is changing with every new entry that you add to the database. And that means that every client automatically can follow the cryptographic verification. And while that sounds a bit complex, the benefits are performance. So when you think of a distributed ledger tech or a blockchain, most people call it, means that typically the consensus is being calculated by all the nodes in the backend. And that means the transactions are automatically slowed down because all the consensus needs to be built and needs to be at least 51% across all the nodes in the backend. In our case, the clients do the verification with every communication step. And the database itself is extremely fast because of that. So you can actually enter 1 million to 10 million data points, depending on your setup, every second. So we write operations a second. And everything that you write is also versioned. So that gives you the possibility also to travel back in time. So you can check what was actually the value 1 month ago, 2 months ago of a certain record. And IMDb is also a key value store as well as a SQL database. So you have also more functionality in the database than you would have in a blockchain world or a DLT world by having really the SQL layer on top of your data structure. And also these data points are completely client verifiable. The interesting part is there are still use cases for blockchains. So public blockchains itself can still provide value because they are distributed and cannot be controlled by anyone, hopefully. And there are requests from the market where you can combine an immutable database with a blockchain. And that is also something that we achieve.
How did you achieve that? I mean, are you integrating your database with different public blockchains? Is that the idea? And if so, which ones?
Mm-hmm. So there are two ways how you can achieve it. In general, we support currently Ethereum, and we use a technology that is called ZK rollups, so zero knowledge rollups. That basically means that you collect as many transactions as possible in a certain time frame, and then you basically send all the transactions at one point. So if a Ethereum blockchain, let's say, allows you to have 100 transactions a second, you just feed 1,000 transactions into one transaction. So this way you can actually get 1,000 times more transaction speed. And the big issue is, of course, what happens during this time frame where you collect all the different data points and the transactions. So you need to make sure that these transactions cannot be tampered with. And IMDb is a perfect solution to use as this kind of a roll-up platform. So you send these 1,000 transactions to IMDb, they are completely immutable during this time frame, and then you send it to a Ethereum blockchain where it's then distributed, worldwide distributed across, I don't know, 10,000s of nodes or even more. And that way you save costs, but you also can gain a lot of performance benefits. That is, I would say, the most popular way probably to combine these two technologies. But in theory, you could also do it the way around. So you could, for example, use IMDb all the time, and then you anchor the IMDb state, so the client verification to Ethereum blockchain. So either you use IMDb to speed up Ethereum and to speed up the applications, but your main point of contact would be Ethereum blockchain, or the main point of data, or you can have IMDb as your main point of data, and just for additional security, you also write a kind of a snapshot or point in time timestamp to the Ethereum blockchain.
We hear a lot about blockchain as it relates to maybe better security for software supply chains these days, but blockchain's a little complicated. So is it practical to use blockchain for that, or is that perhaps a use case where we should be thinking about another approach?
I don't know how it will be, or how the situation will be in 5-10 years, but currently a blockchain is definitely far too slow. Any distributed blockchain is far too slow to keep up with this amount of data that you would need to protect the software supply chain. That is the reason why we started initially with IMDb. So we developed IMDb because we needed a very fast immutable data structure to keep up with all the artifacts that are being created during a software build, and an enterprise corporate company is producing sometimes hundreds, thousands, millions of artifacts every single day. So you need to keep up with this volume, and you also need to be able to store data. That is an important point I missed in the blockchain part. Blockchains are not meant to store data. They are meant to store transactions and hashes. IMDb was built from the ground up to store data as well. So you can store evidence like vulnerability scanner reports, like build logs, or any kind of attestation as well. So there are ways where you can use, I would say, technologies that use the same cryptographic technology as a blockchain, but not the current setup of a blockchain. And IMDb is one of them, but there are also other platforms out there like a Trillion or Record that just focus on the ledger technology, but not so much on being really a database.
So your database, as I understand it, is open source, and you just had some updates to it. So what's new and what's coming down the pipe?
Yes. So from when we actually started developing IMDb, we wanted to have IMDb open source because there are so many use cases that we don't want to disclose or to just have a closed source application. And we wanted to have it ready for everyone, but also everybody should be able to look into the details, how the verification happens. So it's also about transparency when it comes to verification. And we saw more and more companies that are in the government or military, or there's a FedRAMP compliance. So that is a kind of a framework or how an application setup or an infrastructure setup needs to look like for a government agency to be able to use it. And one of these requirements is having a so-called FIPS compliant cryptographic hashing technology. So everything, all methods that you use, all libraries that you use need to be FIPS compliant to be part of this FedRAMP initiative. And that is something we added. So now IMDb is with 1.4 that just has been released, is FIPS compliant. That is a major step forward when it comes to government use, military use. But it also allows different cryptographic and hashing technologies to be used in the future. So when a company uses, for example, a closed source cryptographic algorithm, they can use it with IMDb as well. Then for the broader public, probably the most exciting feature is our synchronous replication. So now you can use the immutable database, but you can also completely set it up high available, and you can also distribute globally if you like. And that is something that we request that we got, of course, from financial institutions, insurances. So whenever it came to an enterprise setup. And one of the most important parts or features and improvements for every release is performance. So we improved the performance of the database itself. We improved also the performance of the replication to make sure we can have a synchronous replication. And all of our SDKs have been updated, the performance has been improved, the usability has been improved. So for all the development communities, from Go to Node.js, Python, all these on Java, all these SDKs have been updated as well.
Do I need to be a rocket scientist to deploy this? Do I need a dedicated DBA, or can some mere mortals actually deploy this?
So the simplest part is just to get it up and running. Everybody can do it. It's just one command. If you're familiar with Docker, you can just do a Docker run command, and then your ImmuDB is up and running. But you can also use it standalone. It's just, that is the beauty of Golang as a development language. You just provide one binary, and you can run it on Linux, Windows, macOS, even on a S390. And it's just a binary that you start, and then ImmuDB is up and running. Of course, there are more complex configurations when you want to have it on a hardened system, or you want to have it replicated and high available. But also this part is so we always do our best to make it extremely easy to use. And the simple deployment should also be ready in 1 minute. And that is currently the case.
And how big is the community? Because, once we have open source, everybody's looking for help from everybody else. But if there's nobody out there, it's a problem. So, just how big is the number of folks that I can lean on?
So we are getting closer and closer to reach 8,000 stars on GitHub. So the interest from the community is definitely also shown in the recognition we get by the stars. We have a couple of hundred active people in the community that also support our core teams. And of course, we have also our core developers that work for Code Notary for us, dedicated for ImmuDB. But the community is over 100 companies, I would say. So companies times the developers, and also, and they are actively helping each other on the GitHub issues, but also on our Discord channel, and also on the support chat in general.
And lastly, do you think we'll see more security use cases involving the database, since we are trying to figure out how to do zero trust everywhere, but underneath there should be some sort of immutable database, right? I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that also other database vendors start to integrate blockchain functionality into an existing database as well, like Oracle did with blockchain tables, for example, or Amazon did with QLDB. But we are the only open source database out there that builds this kind of immutable setup with key value store and SQL on top of it. And I fully agree, either as the top tier or the first tier. So that is typically true for all sensible data or sensitive data that should never be tampered with. So we see, for example, the Indian Ministry of Housing, all the smart cities are using ImmuDB, or their framework for the smart cities is using ImmuDB to track and securely store all the API requests that go in and get processed. So there are a lot of data types that need to be stored in an immutable database. So I'm not saying that the immutable database is going to solve everything, but there are certain data types where you want to make sure nobody's ever going to be able to tamper with it. You have a version in place that is also tamper-free, and that is timestamped so you can follow the sequence where changes made. And the demand is getting bigger and bigger. We even see cases where people fight ransomware with ImmuDB. So because you can very quickly go back to a former version of your data record. They don't use ImmuDB as their primary database, but they use ImmuDB to protect the primary database.
All right, folks, immutability may not be as inscrutable as you think. Hey, Dennis, thanks for being on the show.
Michael, thank you very much. Pleasure too.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Mark Stanford, who is CEO for OccamSec. And we're going to be talking about the impact the executive order from the Biden administration is having on cybersecurity, for better and for worse. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. Happy to be here today.
Now, the executive order applies to federal agencies, but do you think that enterprises are starting to look at the same issues outlined in the executive order and starting to move accordingly? And are they going to be in lockstep with federal agencies on this stuff, or is it a little bit more hit and miss than that?
I suspect that's the hope, because, I mean, everyone is pretty much facing the same issues, right? So the security issues that critical infrastructure faces are the same critical issues that everyone in the private sector faces. So I think that there will be this inclination to go in lockstep, although I suspect ultimately it won't work quite as planned.
To that degree, what do you perceive to be the actual problem at hand? I mean, we all agree, conceptually at least, that we should have more secure software supply chains, but between the theory and the practice, what do you see as the issue that people are getting hung up on, or trips, or, fundamentally, what's the challenge that needs to be dealt with?
I mean, I think fundamentally it's really hard, right? And this is a conversation I've had with CISOs and CEOs and everyone across the board. And cybersecurity is just really difficult, right? There are so many components that can be impacted. I mean, even if you take like a really simple software program, there are multiple developers working on that. There's multiple code, there's multiple inputs. And then as you just grow that out, you end up with this more and more complicated issue. And then you throw human beings into the mix with all the stuff they bring. So you end up with weak passwords or badly written code. And it's just really complicated. And I think there's a tendency to try and simplify everything, which is good if you want people to understand it. But when it comes to actually solving the problem, we have to sort of go away from simplification, realize there's a lot going on here. What's going to give us the biggest bang for the buck? What can't we control? And so on. And we just seem to have a hard time doing that.
It seems like some of the simpler things that people could focus on is the attacks are targeting the credentials of developers, and then they're just hacking into their system and going wherever they want. So, it's great to have maybe an immutable blockchain database that tracks every software component in the world, but maybe we just need to focus on some of the simple stuff early. Is that kind of where we are?
Yeah, I agree, right? I mean, there's a concept really at work here that, bad guys will always go after the lowest hanging fruit, right? I'm going to go the quickest way I can to achieve a target, right? And I mean, we do lots of penetration testing, lots of security assessment. And as much as it's really good to find some really fantastic exploit that gets me in that nobody's seen before, if I can just find a password online that gets me in, I'm going to go that route. So you're right. We should focus on those simple things, right? Using strong passwords. I mean, as much as everyone debates passwords, they should go away. Passwords aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So let's stop debating about the merits of are passwords good and just focus on how do we make passwords secure, right? And if you look at sort of the common thought process around this is that your password should be, 12 characters long, a combination of alphanumerics, special characters. That's a complete waste of time, right? Firstly, people won't remember it. Secondly, it's really easy for computers to actually crack those passwords. So instead, just have people choose 4 random words that they can use as a password and go from there, right? Patching is the other one, right? Patches are released on a fairly regular schedule by all software vendors. So Microsoft do it every second Tuesday of the month, for instance, the infamous Patch Tuesday. Apply those patches because those patches fix security holes. But then when you look at more complex environments, patching even becomes problematic as well. So I think there are these simple things that we can do, but we still have to put them in context and work out, are they really simple or not? And I think the cloud has made this problem somewhat worse in a way, because people have now started to develop this mindset that security is somebody else's problem. So I'm using AWS or Azure or any SaaS solution, they're going to run my security for me, so I don't have to do anything, right? which is completely wrong. And that's making that problem worse. So we think we've made it simpler by pushing it to someone else, but we've just moved the risk somewhere else, and the risk has actually got bigger.
What is your sense of the actual threat to our software supply chains? Is it severe? And I ask the question because a lot of this got traced back to the Log4j shell vulnerability, but I'm not sure I'm seeing a lot of exploits for that. But then again, you might not see them. So exactly, how vulnerable are these software supply chains in reality versus the theory?
I think SolarWinds is the sort of gold standard, if that's the right word, of a supply chain attack, right? So we have so much software that's developed all over the place, that's deployed all over the place, that nobody really knows what's going on. So I think those supply chains are extremely vulnerable. And I think that the way this is developed in terms of like, I'm outsourcing my code to someone far away, I'm outsourcing my design to someone, everything is outsourced. All those points potentially are easy to target. And then if you look at the way software is typically deployed into environments, there's no real security assessment that goes on in a lot of organizations. So if I'm buying a new agent to put on my computer to do some security function even, right? No one's really looked at what's going on with that code. And there are so many places along the way that code could be interdicted and messed with. We just don't know what's going on. And that problem is only going to get worse because we're only going to outsource more development.
And a lot of that outsourcing, quote unquote, takes the form of open source components that people are importing into their application from various directories. And Linux is one thing where there's thousands of people doing peer reviews, but with Log4j, turned out there was a handful of people working on that. And they didn't really have a lot of time for the security aspect of this thing. So do we need some sort of rating system or assessment capability of these modules that people are using to say, hey, the level of security in this thing is this, behave accordingly?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, there's the concept of SBOM, right? The software bill of materials that's starting to fly around now. I think having a way to assess all the components you're using quickly and say, okay, this is secure, this is not secure. I think that's a really good idea. I think that we should automate that as much as we can, right? So this analysis of code should be done via automation because that way we can scoop everything up and then have human expertise look at sort of like the high risk issues. I think that's a really good idea. I suspect there'll be some issues around that. I mean, the other thing as well is that code is changing so frequently, right? So we do a lot of website security assessments, right? And lots of web applications use various JavaScript libraries. Every single JavaScript library is being updated on a regular basis, and there are lots of vulnerabilities out there for it, right? Now, a lot of those vulnerabilities can't really be used to achieve very much right now, but you've got this constant development of code with new features being built into it. So we've got to think about how do we keep up with that because software just isn't static. So I think you're right, we do need to do it, but again, we need to do it in a smart way, which means that we really have to technically assess this code, say, this is what we've assessed it for. This is what we know is bad. This is what we know it's good. And also, this is what we don't know. And we're working out how we're going to assess that at some point.
You mentioned SBOMs. One of the challenges in my mind, at least, is that the applications themselves are more dynamic than ever. They are made up of containers and microservices, and the environment is changing faster and faster. Can the SBOMs actually keep pace with that? And if so, on the back end of this, am I going to have kind of a red light, green light system somewhere that says, oh, wait, I see this component's in the SBOM, and so we're not going to use this application?
Do you want my honest opinion?
Yeah.
I don't think SBOM will keep up, right? I think SBOM is a reasonably good idea, right? I think that when you actually peel it back, again, like so many ideas that we run into in cybersecurity, the implementation is going to be really difficult, right? I mean, let's not even think about all the closed software, right? I mean, there's loads of open source stuff. but all the kind of vendor produced stuff that's locked down that I can't see the source code. I don't know what libraries are in Microsoft Windows, for instance, that may have come from somewhere else, right? So I think that the SBOM concept is nice. I think the practical implementation is going to be really, there's a few of these libraries that are used a lot that we've done work on. So we know they're secure, but then there's this whole population of other stuff that we just can't get around to because it's just so complicated.
Do we have a problem that is so large that people can't contemplate it? Because there are billions and billions of lines of code for applications already installed, most of which was used involving components that nobody tested, to your earlier point of view. So it would take us decades to replace all that stuff. So is this an issue that's going to go away anytime soon, or is there something to be done about the security technical debt that we have accrued over the last 3 decades of not paying attention to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally we'd scrap it all and start all over again. But in reality, we're not going to do that, right? So, I mean, I think that it's interesting, right? Because cybersecurity, so I've been in cybersecurity now unofficially for 37 years, right? Which makes me far too old. And you see these waves come through, right? So back in the day, we were just about, nobody really knew about cybersecurity, right? So we break into stuff and it was cool. It was, we're great, we're hackers, it's cool. And then as time went by, you saw these waves of ideas. And then a few years ago, you got to this concept of assumed breach, right? So I'm going to assume someone's in my network. I'm going to assume they're in there and that they're causing havoc. How do I capture them? And I think that that's sort of evolved into that we've stopped trying to be proactive, to use that terrible term about this. So really, we're not going to fix all the technical debt, right? What we need to do is focus on testing the stuff we've deployed to find these holes and fix them, and at the same time, develop technologies that are actually able to join these dots. Because if I'm using a vulnerable JavaScript library, but you can't get anywhere, I shouldn't have to worry about that, right? Like I can deal with that tomorrow. What we need is technology that, again, is testing out software to find holes, testing environments, testing them in terms of how they're actually deployed, and also giving people who have to fix this stuff the information they need to prioritize. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? I think when you look at concepts like SBOM, when you look at vulnerability scanning, right? When you look at all those things, you end up with these giant lists of problems and you land it on some CISO's desk. And the CISO's like, okay, well, I have 2 people working in my security team. We're stretched as it is, and you've just given me 10,000 new problems. So I think that working on automation to find issues, testing stuff, that's good. So don't assume breach. Assume that you stop them as soon as you can, but also more importantly is providing context to people who have to fix these issues so they can really focus on what's important. So SBOM is nice. I mean, it will show up and you'll give me this whole list of things. And then I'm going to go reference all the security ratings around those. And I'm going to find that I've got 10,000 vulnerable software libraries in my environment. Okay, so what? Now what do? Do you pull that out and say, well, actually, no, marketing department, we can't launch our platform today because we have 10 vulnerable libraries? Because that's not going to work. You're going to end up unemployed, right? So I think that we have to change the way we're approaching this. Realize there is a lot of technical debt. There is a lot of vulnerable software out there, but realize that you don't need to fix everything today. You need to work out what's important to me and realize that what's important to me may not be important to you, and then figure out, okay, that's what I'm going to focus on. That's what we need to do.
What's your sense of the relationship between security teams and developers? Is that improving? Everybody talks about shifting security left towards developers. Most developers I know, security was an elective that they never took, and they don't really have a whole lot of experience. And most developers are trying to figure out how to get past the security guys so they can get their app into production. And sometimes they just ignore them or end run them. So what should we do? Do I put them all in a room and lock the door and hope for the best? Or is there some way to kind of bring these folks together?
Well, the development team in my company is really good at security, so they're cool. Yeah, I mean, that rift is still there, right? I mean, having been around this for a long time, I've been through I remember the cowboy hat books back in the day on application security. And there was discussion of, okay, we'll get developers to know about SDLC and how it should be. And there was a lot of talk about that. That didn't really work. And then we've had DevOps and SecDevOps and all these things. And I think there's still this gap. And I think fundamentally it comes back to what I was just talking about, right? If I'm a developer, I'm usually producing a product that my company wants to go sell, right? Unless it's open source, in which case that's different. But I'm producing this thing and I am under the gun still to do it as fast as possible. So I am going to shortcut the security controls. I'm going to try and bypass it because I've just got to get the code out the door because my boss is breathing down my neck because someone's breathing down their neck and so on and so forth. So I think that, again, coming up with, I mean, it's very grandiose, right? But I mean, if code is secure by default, if we're using development environments that, the chance of introducing a security vulnerability is really hard to begin with, and everyone's just using that, and we've got automated testing going on to make sure these things are secure, that's what we need to do, because I don't think you're ever going to get every software developer to drink the cybersecurity Kool-Aid because they just have competing goals, right? I've been on phone calls still, right, where CEOs of companies want to bypass the security controls so they can read their email on their iPad while they're on vacation, right? So if you start from there, as that permeates down, everyone is under the gun to get things done quickly. And security is just a secondary thought. And that's not going to change. I don't see that changing. I've spoken to lots of development shops. I've been around lots of application development. I've seen lots of the end state. And we still find loads of security holes. I mean, we find security vulnerabilities in everything, right? And it's not the fault of the developers, right? It's the fault of the construct that they're working in.
All right, folks. Well, you heard it here. We are unsafe at any speed, so hopefully we can all come together and figure this out. But just like the automotive industry way back in the 60s, it took them about a decade and a half to build safe cars, and we may be on the same trajectory. Mark, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Have a good day.
All right, guys, back to you in the studio.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. We had some amazing interviews with industry professionals to give you the latest in the tech world. And alongside our airing of The Lab with Brendan O'Leary and Engineering the Change, we had plenty of great content today. We'll be back again on Thursday, so we hope to see you then. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.